Washington, D.C. and the nation are closing out the year in the middle of a government shutdown, with the two parties as far apart as they can be over the need for a border wall. For some analysis on This Week in Politics, I'm joined by Washington Post columnists Michael Gerson and Jonathan Capehart. Mark Shields and David Brooks are away. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Jonathan, to you first. The chasm between the Democratic Party and President Trump over this shutdown fight over immigration gets wider and wider and wider. Is it your sense that either side genuinely wants a solution, or do they actually relish this fight?
I'll take President Trump first. I think he relishes the fight. He's been talking about this border wall since his campaign days. He's been talking about it as president. The only thing that has shifted, well, actually a couple of things that have shifted, who's going to pay for it? It was always going to be Mexico during the campaign, Mexico through most of the administration, and now he's trying to put the American taxpayer on the hook for the border wall. Also, the definition of what the wall, it's a wall, then it's slats, and then it's whatever else. As for the Democrats, I actually do think that they do want to have a solution, not just when it comes to a border wall, but also when it comes to immigration. We've been down this road at least 2 times this year, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, where Democrats have said yes to funding for a border wall in exchange for protection for dreamers, or in exchange for immigration reform. And each time the president has rejected, each time the Republicans have rejected it. And so now I think with Democrats coming into the majority next week, that we might see a push for that. But let's not forget something. Republicans still control the House. They still control the Senate, and President Trump is still in the White House, and they could do something with their majorities that they have right now. Clearly, they're choosing not to.
Michael, do you see any obvious end to this logjam?
Well, I think you're correct, Jonathan, that Democrats have the elements of maybe a deal on this. It's not as though they're talking about 2 massively different positions here. It's not, it's a rounding error in the budget. I talked with a Democratic senator today who said, set out 2 positions that might solve this problem, one including the Dreamers, but said, we no longer trust the president. He has to move first. Mm-hmm. And
because they have offered these, they've put those on the table in the past, and the president has said no to them.
Right, exactly, and pulled the rug out. And so he's an unreliable negotiating partner. The president and his people, however, do believe that, first of all, they're going to dominate the issue that instead of the Speaker of the House having her issues, okay? I mean, they're going to dominate what the topic of discussion is. And they think that that's a winner. This is really a case in which both sides think they're winning. I think it's not likely that the president is winning, but I do think that this is a little bit of a different shutdown than in the past, because it's a very partial shutdown. You're not shutting down veterans and HHS. There are some.
You think which would be much more politically unpalatable.
Right, exactly. I think the cost would be higher. This is a very partial shutdown, which could go on longer for that reason.
What is your sense about what happens next week? You're saying right now the Republicans have all the chips. They're the ones in control. How much changes when Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats take over next week?
Well, the biggest thing will be that Nancy Pelosi will be Speaker, and the Democrats will have a big majority. But Michael hits on something that is going to be the wild card in all of this, and that's President Trump. I mean, I talked to someone today on the House side who brought up the same issue that you brought up, which is no one knows what the president actually wants. A long time ago, Senator Schumer said negotiating with President Trump is like negotiating with Jell-O. I think what you're going to hear is from the Democrats, here's what our plan is, but we can't move until we hear from the president what exactly he wants. What are the contours of the deal? And then once that's out there, pray that he sticks to it. Because as our colleague Catherine Rampell writes in a column today, we've seen many times when the president will publicly say he wants this fill-in-the-blank deal, and then at the last minute pull the rug out from under it, as Michael said.
Yeah. And it's particularly interesting that the majority leader of the Senate, a Republican, is taking the same position, essentially.
Right.
Neutral position saying, work this out, I no longer am in this. And that is a strange thing as well. I mean, this is supposed to be a unified governing party. And it is not on this issue right now.
Can I ask you a question about, specifically about the president's rhetoric about immigration and the impact that has on this debate? The immigrants who come to this country, they're not all saints, but they are not, as the president portrays them, a criminal, violent, contagious horde that he wants us all to think of them as. And doesn't that rhetoric, and doesn't the failure of anyone in the GOP to step up and say, this is dangerous rhetoric, doesn't that make this debate really unsolvable if that's the way he portrays them?
Well, there are two levels here. There's a policy debate about border security, and that's a valid debate. You can talk about whether you want a wall or whether you don't want a wall. There's no evil approach in here. The problem comes when you dehumanize migrants as a way to raise this debate. And that's what the president has done, put it at the center of the Republican agenda by dehumanizing migrants. And that's a very tough thing to get any agreement around. You can't come up with a comprehensive solution under those terms. The president would have to essentially give up some of that if he wanted agreement. But he thinks that that is his best play going into the 2020 election. It's a little odd because that was his message in the midterm election. Didn't turn out all that well. But he did not learn any lesson from the midterm, as far as I can tell. He still thinks this is the unifying Republican theme.
And Jonathan, to this point, it's not just on immigration, it's on so many issues that the Republican resistance to the president on Syria, on Saudi Arabia, on climate change, whatever it might be, the president, he really has taken full leadership of his party.
Yes, full leadership of his party, but also as viewed through the prism of who he views as his base. So we talk about the fact that the president has sort of a solid 30% of the base. He talks only to them. This rhetoric, his closing argument, which to my mind was a racist closing argument about the immigrant horde coming to the border, he's carrying that throughout because it plays well with the people who are applauding him, people who are watching certain cable channels that cater to that. And as we have seen in terms of the reaction to what the president may or may not do on immigration, the people who are on television or on radio who might disagree with him vehemently, they have outsized power over the president in terms of what he will do, what he will propose. And so as long as the president caters to them and not do what Democrats and Republicans in the White House, in the Oval Office have done for generations, that is, once you get in that office, you broaden your reach. He has not done that. He has made it a point to exclude anyone who he might view as someone who has not supported him or doesn't support him.
Michael, looking forward to next year, there's obviously the other elephant in the room, and that is Robert Mueller and what might or might not come out of this ongoing investigation, which the president it has been a thorn in his side, to say the least, for the entirety of the investigation. How do you, when you look forward and imagine how that might play out, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think the pieces here are, the rumors are we might see something drop in mid-February. That's
a report from Robert Mueller.
That's just rumor. But if it were to happen in that time frame, then there would be an assessment of how strong the case is here. I think there would be tremendous pressure within the Democratic constituency to support impeachment if there's a strong case made by Mueller. And I think that may not be good politics. I've talked to some Democrats who aren't sure that that's good politics, given the Clinton example. But I think there's going to be huge pressure. And then that will be the centerpiece argument of American politics at that point. There will be no other topic as far as, under the radar screen. I talked with a member of McConnell's staff who said, and it asked the question, what can you get done while you're debating impeachment? And the question was just enough to keep things going. And I think that's the likely outcome here. And then you have the drama of the House, but then the drama of the Senate, where I think he can only lose a few Republicans. It's not a huge gap that has to be made up. And that, I think, is going to be the central drama of American politics.
Is that how you see it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think if Special Counsel Mueller presents a report where the evidence is it's overwhelming, I think that gives not cover, because right now the push in the Democratic Party, if you listen to the base, is let's impeach the guy now without anything from Mueller. But what a Mueller report would do, if there is that evidence that we all think might be there, that gives everyone sort of a centerpiece to focus on. I think Democrats in the House would be compelled to start impeachment proceedings if the evidence warrants. And I think it would sort of focus the mind in the Republican-controlled Senate. If those articles of impeachment do come over, they have to take them seriously and have to debate them seriously and have to hold the president accountable and judge the facts as they are if we get to that point. Because I think Michael is right. It will be the central focus of American life and politics, because the charges and the issues that we will be debating at that time will be that serious.
And it will put tremendous strain on American institutions, essential American institutions, the FBI, the way the Congress reacts, whether it's responsible or not responsible.
How the courts respond.
Right, exactly. And so it will be a fascinating historical moment when American institutions are in distress.
But let's just say that you both have put forward the example that it's conclusive evidence where it's clearly black or white. But if it were more on the margins and it wasn't as crystal clear and there wasn't a smoking gun, doesn't that put that whole impeachment push in much more jeopardy? It just becomes a much more riskier calculation.
I think it's a very possible outcome that you will have a report that's strong enough for every Democrat to support impeachment in the House of Representatives and not strong enough to bring any Republican senators in the Senate. That's quite possible.
Conviction.
Right, for conviction. Right. And then you have, what, a polarization machine. I mean, you're dividing the country in fundamental ways without a clear argument either way. That's going to put huge strains on American political life.
But I do think, though, that even though there would be that strain on our political institutions, that should not be an argument for doing nothing. I mean, we have these processes in place, and they've been written in the Constitution to safeguard against someone doing something untoward that is in violation of their oath of office and in violation of the trust of the American people. And I think at a minimum, we have to let the process run its course. Whatever that means for our institutions and our politics, that's what they're there for.
Jonathan Capehart, Michael Gerson, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Good to be here.